All right, welcome everybody to the December 18th meeting of the Williston Energy Committee. Melinda has sent out the agenda in advance. We've got a few topics tonight, including hopefully finishing up on the recommendations around the clean heat ordinance and looking at 2025 work plan opportunities, specifically opportunities for, I think, outreach and engagement with other groups in town. With that said, just a reminder on, as we're trying to keep our meetings efficient and get through all our stuff, as we get to each topic, Melinda will set out what we hope, an outcome that we hope to achieve with that topic so that we can make sure that we're having the right conversations and focus on the right things. And any public comment, we would ask folks to limit to 3 minutes for items not on the agenda. We'll do them during the public comment period. And for items on the agenda, we'll make an opportunity for public comment, though not discussion, during that specific topic. Anything else anyone has before we move on to public comment? All right, so we've got, I see at least, it was a Brian Forrest, well, actually, just make sure we have a quorum. We do have a quorum tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right,
Kevin's up there.
Kevin, thank you. And sorry, I get here too late to meet you.
Hi, I'm Tim Perrin. I'm from Vermont Gas.
Awesome, thank you. I think we did meet before. So you're not here for public comment.
It was to provide some comments distinctly for the clean heat ordinance and answer any questions that I can.
Excellent. I apologize, I'm coming in hot from work. So all right, Brian, I assume you're here for public comment?
No, I'm clean heat standard.
Okay.
Ordinance.
In that case, I don't, oh, actually, no, Melinda, I don't see anyone else for
No.
public comment.
There's nobody else online.
All right, so I think we're good to move on to the approval of last month's, the last meeting, November 13th meeting minutes.
I didn't see any problems with them, as far as I could tell.
This is Kevin. Hello. I didn't see any problems. It was a little brief. There were, more discussions about the clean heat standard special ordinance, but it'll pass.
Yeah, I'm trying to kind of keep them brief, and I have provided a link to the recording if anybody wants to kind of go back and look or listen to get the greater details.
All right, with
One
that,
minor change. It's just a word thing. The header on page 2. The
Oh,
date-
yeah,
the
it still
date,
says September 20th.
September, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the date. I just saw that too. Yeah.
Not relevant to the content. I didn't see any other changes in content.
do we have a motion to adopt the minutes pending the date change?
I make a motion to adopt the amendments with that minor date change.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt the minutes of November 13th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I think that was
Aye, in favor.
so unanimous, 6 ayes.
All right.
All right.
All right, so on to, I think, what's called the meat of tonight's agenda. Melinda, do you wanna, what's your thought on handling comment, input, and discussion amongst the committee?
I can do like a really brief overview and then I can open it up to comments and discussion. Does that sound reasonable?
Sure.
Okay.
So we'll do overview and then public comment, or do you want to have whole public comment till after the committee discusses?
I think maybe comments first and then
Okay,
discussion, because I think there might be some questions back and forth with Tim,
great.
especially, so, anyway, all right, so the memo just, this will be transmitted to town manager and the select board sometime in February. So this is draft, and starting from summarizing how we got here through the request of Sustainable Williston, the legal review that the town underwent. We got a bunch of questions answered from the town attorney regarding different points of the ordinance and the town's authority to develop and adopt an ordinance. And let's see. And then we solicited public input, including a survey put out to developers, architects, and engineers who work in Williston or surrounding towns. We received pretty early input from VGS, who came and met with me. Tim and Dylan came and met with me in late August, and we discussed this. The housing committee has discussed this in several meetings and has provided some input. Amy Demetrowitz of Champlain Housing Trust provided some input, and some developers got some input through the survey. The energy committee also put out a couple of articles to the Observer, and there was some feedback to those articles. And I believe there were two members of the public there were members of the public, including Sustainable Williston members, and two members, sort of members at large, not associated with any group, who came to meetings specifically because of the clean heat ordinance. And then the energy committee has gone through and discussed these recommendations and has come to consensus, to the best of my knowledge, on several recommendations. I think now there's still discussion about renewable natural gas and whether it should be allowed or not. I had also brought up that members of the housing committee have expressed some reservations about the waiver provision policy that would require a calculation of 25-year, basically life cycle cost of a traditional fossil fuel system versus a heat pump system, and they're concerned about that might be overly burdensome, especially for small scale projects. So I have just made a point. Does the energy committee want to discuss that again, or are they pretty strongly wedded to that type of waiver provision? And then so then anyway, the housing committee input, I've summarized their energy committee recommendations, and that's basically what I've got right now for the memo. And I think what the goal tonight is for you to sort of finalize your recommendations that you're going to bring to the select board.
All right. Should we go to public comment first, and then we'll, like I said, that will cause some discussion. Brian, you wanna lead us off there?
Yeah. Looking at the legal issues. The fifth point down is the town is mandated to appoint a qualified building inspector to choose to adopt any building codes. Since this is not a building code, this is a recommendation that we go to the ordinance rather than trying to amend the building code. Let's see.
If you could just hold for 1 second, Melinda, is that, I had a similar, in the first bullet, we talk about, second. No, third bullet, we talk about building codes or, well, anyways, well, to Brian's point. We'd heard before that the ordinance would require a building inspector. Is that the case if the ordinance is not actually a building code, or is the ordinance by nature a building code?
Well, so we solicited legal advice about this, and we were told that it is unclear whether a building code is something distinct from a one-off regulation. So even the lawyer said it's not really clear. I think, I don't know. So the town could say, oh, well, this is just a one-off regulation. We're not gonna appoint a building inspector. And then, the town would really be relying on self-certification. The Energy Committee recommendation, as I understood it, was to not rely on self-certification. So that would require somebody who's qualified to look at these systems, determine whether it's capable of, supplying 85% of the heating load, et cetera. Right now, I'm not sure we have somebody on staff who's qualified to do that, but.
To
Could I-
follow up.
Could I speak to that?
Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
We had discussed making the certification done by an engineer hired by selected by the town or the zoning board, zoning and planning, but paid for by the developer. And so we wouldn't have to hire a person to certify this, because I think it's adding another burden, which would be a stumbling block to passing this ordinance, because it's a very expensive item, hiring another person. But I think we should
Well-
put the onus back on the developer and have them pay for it.
All right, and do you have another comment, Brian?
Yeah. The last bullet point about levying a fee, the certification cost could be part of the use of those fees, so that the funds, you pay into a fund according to the cost of your project, but for a small project like an ADU or one house, that is a larger percentage of the cost of construction. So you might want to just have a flat fee for the inspector, or subsidizing the smaller projects from this fee. That's just another comment there. And I have some questions further on, but I know one about natural gas. Gas in any form is a carbon-based fuel, and we all know that. It's just like wood and oil and coal. So if we're trying to eliminate those sources from our ordinance, why would we possibly contemplate gas? Because it's a carbon-based fuel. And the renewable part is at max 10%, so it's a big scam. So it's not a real thing. It's just a foot in the door. And the Energy Committee recommendation is the first one. I just wanted to clarify that the heating system design should provide a minimum of 85%, right? Not a maximum.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. And let's see. Okay. The one recommendation to aid this along is to find some funds to pay for a study of life cycle cost of heat pumps and hot water heat pumps, so that we can get a definitive answer and not somebody's prejudices. That's basically what I have. Thank you.
That is a good point that we haven't considered, and it's not something I heard from Burlington or South Burlington. If there's, and I realize HVAC is a field with lots of complicated engineering.
Mhm.
But if there were some ways for us to pull together some guidelines or rules of thumb as a starting point. I was thinking really specifically for when we get down to addressing things like ADUs, whatever, if there could be a simplified standard or simplified, what am I looking for? Calculation that folks could use in lieu of like an engineer approved one that we might still be able to move forward for some of those units. Without requiring, without giving them the full exemption, but without requiring something. There may be grants that we could find that would help us. Yeah, I'm thinking something along the lines of like with current technology. There's no shortage of data for the temperatures that we have over the last, say, 10 years or whatever. I think we'd be able to come up with a generic answer that we might be able to apply for smaller developments where it would be cost prohibitive to do the full exemption process.
So I guess there's two parts to that cost. Would be the installation cost, and then there's the operating costs. So
Life cycle study to cover both those issues.
right.
Yeah, full life cycle would have to take into account both. All right, thank you, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
On to Tim, right?
Great, yes. Well, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to join the Williston Energy Committee this evening. I'm Tim Perrin. I manage our energy efficiency programs at Vermont Gas Systems. Been with the organization for about 3 years. Before that, 15 years with Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, who delivers the Efficiency Vermont contract and the DC Sustainable Energy Utility. In my spare time for 6 years, I was a member of the South Burlington Energy Committee, including its former chair, and before that, on the Burlington Electric Commission. So I've been involved with helping shape climate action plans and some of these ordinances, both in Burlington and South Burlington, as well as within my day job, trying to figure out how to evolve some of our energy efficiency programs to best serve customers with some of the various rules that have developed. So with my Vermont Gas hat on, I advocate for trying to keep the ordinances simple and as consistent as possible. As you can probably imagine, for a utility, even with as small a footprint as we have, as well as developers that are trying to do work in and around Chittenden, Franklin, and Addison County, the more consistency, understanding of the rules of the game, the better, as opposed to having Williston doing one thing, Burlington doing another thing, South Burlington doing another. Hence the South Burlington Energy Committee largely adopting the rules that Burlington had drafted as part of its framework, and adding domestic hot water as part of that as well. Heat pumps are fantastic. I actually, when I started with VGS about 3 years ago, I went 100% renewable natural gas right out of the gate and actually installed heat pumps last spring timeframe. I think the real test for performance will be in the next couple of days when we're seeing, single digit 0 degree temperatures. But I know that based on my own modeling, around 10 to 15 degrees outside air temperature is a good switchover point for me to be able to go from heat pump mode to renewable natural gas based on kind of the financial break even. Some of the tests will be, can those heat pumps actually carry the full load of my home in these colder winter weather? I have the benefit of some weatherization knowledge and some friends that are willing to help me, so I'm hopeful I'll be able to get there. And in the case of new construction, especially with Vermont's very progressive energy code and stretch codes, buildings can perform with heat pumps carrying the load all winter long, even when we have those kind of normal Vermont winters with those -20, -25 degrees. Some of the challenges probably pointed out by the affordable housing community. There's a higher first cost. That's what some of this ordinance is intended to get at, as well as, some of the ongoing maintenance costs are a big unknown and generally a little bit higher than combustion-based systems. So those are some things that should be taken into consideration. On behalf of VGS, I would advocate for not taking the allowance or the flexibility, the optionality of renewable natural gas out of the ordinance here. Although in both South Burlington and Burlington, there were very few developers, kind of unique situations where they opted to pursue renewable natural gas instead of a heat pump, primary heating and domestic hot water system. Being able to afford developers, housing providers that option, I think is something that is good to allow that flexibility. In the case of South Burlington, the times where we've seen a customer pursue a combustion-based system and renewable natural gas has been with providing larger domestic hot water systems for multifamily buildings. right? A heat pump water heater generally is a little bit more complex to design and install. You need multiple buffer tanks, sometimes multiple heat pump water heaters feeding into that, and some level of robust modeling to ensure that in a multi-unit building, it's not gonna run out of hot water and have folks maybe having to switch over to electric resistance water heating, which is really expensive. Like I said earlier, heat pumps can carry the primary heating load for all single-family housing, pretty much all multifamily housing in our climate zone, especially kind of with some of the recent trends, the warming trends that we've seen. And the majority of developers have pursued that as an option. Not just because of the ordinance being in place, but also with some of the increasing requirements and kind of the rating scheme and the scoring associated with the residential building energy standard and commercial, which basically gives more points to primary heating, all electric buildings in order to meet some of that code compliance. So. On the topic of the ADUs or some of the smaller residential, the kind of the burden associated with those costs. One idea could be coming up with a BTU per square foot target associated with high performance construction, probably something in like the 20 to 25,000 BTUs per square foot range. And then being able to come up with some rules of thumb to say, hey, if the heat pump is of this size, it can carry the load of the building 85% of the time and deliver X number of BTUs across that square footage. That could come up with a really simplified calculation for being able to come up with compliance. I think compliance is just a little bit harder with bigger buildings, obviously multifamily and commercial spaces, but for some of these smaller ADUs and single family where they may not have a robust budget to be able to spend on an outside engineer or somebody doing the math for them. I think there are some easy ways to be able to come up with something that's defendable, justifiable, that aligns with the laws of physics.
I actually have a question about this whole idea of doing a life cycle comparison. I mean, in my opinion, like, it seems like folks are reinventing the wheel every time they do that. Like, isn't there sort of some general parameters that like you could establish and use and not have to have people make that calculation every single time? Like, I mean, some situations are gonna differ, but I mean, it seems like there's a lot of repetitiveness there, and we're asking people to do the same thing over and over. I mean, different people to do the same calculation over and over to show, I mean, granted that some builders will just put in heat pumps and won't bother, but those that are seeking a waiver, like, I don't know, it just in some ways seems a little silly to me to like, I think it would be simpler and more straightforward to just decide what situations warrant a waiver and what don't. I mean, I don't know. To just allow some flexibility and decide in what situations you're gonna allow that flexibility.
But how do you determine that? I agree that you don't want to reinvent the wheel, that
I
it almost
think-
looks like a simple
Well,
equation of, initial cost plus an assumption of, percentage for maintenance every year plus an
But I
inflation
mean,
factor, three
why-
numbers and
like,
just
why do you?
throw it
why would
even in
you-
there.
But why would you make people do that over and over again? Like, it just seems, to me, it seems like a silly exercise, when instead you
Yeah.
could just say, okay, maybe we should just, provide a waiver for affordable homes. Provide a waiver for, ADUs, or, single family home to duplex conversions or something like that, something really small scale. Or, I don't know, it's just.
I would
it's just an
assume that,
idea.
I would assume that we could have an easy to use formula that doesn't require reinventing the wheel for single family. Small multifamily like duplex, triplex, if that's a situation, I would expect the only time that a simplified formula might not be appropriate is for larger. Buildings, apartments, whatnot, where we have complex, HVAC arrangements,
Mhm.
right? And so maybe as part of this, it's not so much part of the ordinance, but the town provides you know, if you'd like to use the, you know, this calculation that we have, or the spreadsheet, or this worksheet that we provide
Mhm.
for your use case, which will cover like all the things we just talked about, you can use that. Otherwise, then you need to do the full
Mhm.
assessment that we're talking about here. But the assessment does seem overkill for someone building 50 like single family homes. I think there's probably good enough assessments on hand where you can plug the numbers in and see what the result is. We should
Um,
also plug numbers in ourselves before we get there so that we know what we're getting ourselves into.
Mhm.
I think it's right to simplify. But I mean, if it's new construction, they're doing load calcs for transformers.
Correct.
For Green Mountain Power already. So I assume. Whatever engineering firm is doing the load calc for the transformer can
Wouldn't be
do,
much of a lift.
yeah,
Well, yeah, and
Right.
that's what I'm saying, like for.
like the
for a
engineering
big
firm is gonna
project,
spend time to
Yeah,
reevaluate it.
for a large project, that makes sense, you know. But for like, say, a homeowner who wants to put in an ADU. Like,
Yeah, you're not gonna hire an
It's
engineering
just-
firm,
No.
but maybe that's the cut.
And I actually had a comment on that because we included. Way back, we talked about whether this was only large projects and not individuals and
I mean,
so
it's.
that whole.
Mhm.
Exemption of whether it's an ADU or somebody building a small home on an individual lot. Should you even have the ordinance apply to that? You know,
Can I ask a question to Vermont Gas? So if you're building an ADU, how are you building out, are you building out the gas line to that ADU? Or are you just expecting them to be all off grid with a heat pump? Like off the. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're converting your garage into an apartment.
Mhm.
You're not, are you then running a gas line?
Yeah, it depends on what type of ADU it is. If it's all part of the same attached building, then generally we can actually run a separate meter off of the service line that's already serving the building. If it's a detached garage or an accessory dwelling unit that is not attached to the original building, then generally we're requesting that there's an E911 address that goes to that new location because it's thought of as a new building, and there's a new service line that's run to it.
Is that like generally cost prohibitive or is that happening?
So any customer under 100 feet, as long as we don't uncover ledge or something that makes it cost prohibitive, we're required to serve.
And charge them for the infrastructure you put in.
No.
That's all.
Oh, you guys
interesting.
need it.
Right, well, that's,
Wow.
yeah,
That's an important.
So that's a big, but this is, yeah, okay. Alright, well, never mind then, because I was thinking, maybe that's a way to
Yeah,
think about exempting buildings, but.
I have a question.
Okay.
The question is, so if you have the setup that Tim said he had, where you have heat pumps and you use them, but on the coldest days you have a backup natural gas or renewable gas system, right? You have two systems, right? So we're asking people who are facing this waiver. So if you go with what we recommend, it's the 85% number, then you have two systems. Well, they'll say, well, it's going to be cheaper if I just put in the one system, the gas system, because my upfront costs are not paying for the heat pump and the natural gas. And so even if the life cycle or the operating costs and the maintenance costs are less for the electric, the upfront cost is going to make that go away. So this waiver just might not work. But it's a question. I don't know if that's.
it does bring up an important point that I think we haven't addressed. The and I don't know if South Burlington and Burlington do this, but the calculation should be required to include the cost of a heat pump.
Yeah.
Or the cost of a heat pump, a primarily heat pump system versus the cost of installation and life cycle cost of the combustion system plus air conditioning, assuming they're going to put it in, which I believe most buildings are on that put in. I don't know if we're calling that out
Good.
yet, but the AC should definitely be considered in the cost because it's kind of it's the thing you get for free with the heat pumps. Free from an installation standpoint.
Yeah. We see a lot of developments that are going with a forced hot air system that also have a heat pump section within the furnace to be able to provide for that central air conditioning, as well as being able to have a dual fuel capabilities as part of your heating system, heat pump or backup natural gas furnace.
And that's what Vermont Gas is installing today, right? When someone calls you up and says, I want you to do your heat pump program for me, it's a hybrid system, and there's one other word for it, but combined.
Yeah, so we actually are doing those centrally ducted heat pumps that allows for that, tying into existing ductwork, getting whole home distribution, as well as back in April, are doing just mini splits as well.
Ah,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Does Vermont Gas have a rule of thumb or standard for what temperature, maybe what cutover temperature to expect for mini splits versus the centrally ducted? Do you differentiate between the two?
It's a little more complex just because with a mini split based system, it's really based on how chopped up your house might be. Where is the mini split? Is it an open floor plan? Is it serving a small room? Where is it in relation to the thermostat that might be controlling some type of a central system? Centrally ducted heat pump is relatively straightforward, depending on if it's natural gas and then determining what the efficiency of your furnace is compared to the efficiency of the heat pump. Can basically say, what is the financial crossover point? How can you potentially maximize the amount of decarbonization that you're doing and what's the cost premium associated with that? Or if you're on 100% renewable natural gas, then like I said, that switchover point for me is around 10 to 15 degrees outside air temperature. I believe that our installers right now are setting that switchover point around 30 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, I was just gonna, so Stowe Electric isn't on Vermont Gas, obviously. So this is just me sitting in on other meetings, but apparently Burlington Electric they're coming up with that problem where the cutover point is set around 40. So the heat pump is being used less than they would expect.
Yeah.
So it's not being utilized as much. And it is a problem for their numbers because they're not seeing in the electric.
Savings materialize.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so that doesn't seem built into this at all. And so is there guidance? Are you saying to the installer? Don't just set it with whatever the control, the package is, but like how would the customer know to then lower that cutoff temperature?
Generally, contractors are installing it based on that 40-degree switchover point to reduce potential callbacks. Anytime you start getting below 40, that's when it leads to defrost cycles associated with the heat pump, which adds to additional wear and tear on the equipment. So contractors, based on anecdotal evidence and conversations that we've had, have said like, yeah, we don't want the callbacks, we don't want the hassle, so we feel like 40 is good enough for a lot of folks, and we don't hear from them over it.
Are those cold climate specific heat pumps they're putting in? I mean, I always have a hard time with these conversations. I've run heat pumps for 5 years, 5 winters now. And have not used a backup system once down to -18. So I'm always flabbergasted. When I hear it's like a 40-degree, that's 58 degrees higher than what I've seen mine able to handle. And granted, that was a cold day, right? But even like going down to 0, they handle, they'll handle this weekend just fine. It's trying to balance those two things is very challenging for me.
I'm not saying the contractors are right.
Okay.
I'm saying this is what they do to prevent the potential for callbacks, either based on their past experience with earlier generations of heat pumps, not maybe necessarily trusting the technology will be able to get there, as well as just the known fact that, defrost cycles potentially allows another point of failure and things that need to get involved. So, yeah, but yeah, we're of the mentality. I think Burlington Electric has moved towards customers needing to prove that the switchover point is like 10 or 15 degrees so that they're before they'll pay an incentive, so that they're actually realizing the natural gas savings that their program is claiming.
So does GMP have a similar? No. Okay, so we're potentially putting these things out in the field and they're just being used how they're used.
For cool.
I watched an interesting video today from Mitsubishi, who obviously makes heat pumps for a lot of people, and it was targeted about their central ducted systems, and it had a mock-up of a new single family home and said And it came and it showed it first, the little diagram of it, and then it said, in some instances, if your house is big enough, you may need two of these. Essentially ducted system, or do one on the first floor and do mini splits all on the second floor, and it shows mini splits being added all over the place in the upper rooms. So it's interesting that one of the major manufacturers of these isn't necessarily promoting one single, central, heat pump system. Or,
Yeah.
And I was the first time I'd really seen somebody say that, that was a video from Mitsubishi itself, not from a contractor.
Heating a building is a factor of the supply air temperature, so how hot is the air that you're delivering, and the airflow that you're delivering, right? And we know that heat pumps are delivering a supply air temperature that's less than any combustion-based furnace. So in order to get that corresponding same amount of heating, you need to increase the airflow. New construction, if you're designing the ductwork from scratch, you can accommodate that. If you're retrofitting it into existing ductwork, maybe the ductwork, it's sized for that warmer air temperature. And maybe you can't actually get the airflow because of static pressure losses as part of it, so. I'd say it's probably the exception rather than the rule, but yes, in large buildings, it can become more problematic.
I find it interesting that when we have. If I feel cold in the house, I don't turn the heat pumps up, I turn the fans up. And at the same temperature, that additional air movement makes all the difference. It's been figuring that out for this year or two. But like once we figure out,
Trial and error for sure.
just, increasing the fan speed, temporarily.
Yeah.
Can get the whole
Also,
house
you're
up
taking
to.
advantage of the air is probably stratified and
Yeah.
you're getting it to mix better. And
Yeah.
you're taking advantage of the warm air that's up there, probably.
I had a couple, wait,
I have questions.
good.
Okay, just, you've talked about the renewable natural gas and saying you're 100% renewable. I don't understand how that works when the renewable is mixed in with all the regular natural gas into the pipeline, right? So how do you say you're 100% renewable, or how does that work?
So I'm voluntarily paying the adder on my Vermont gas bill each month to basically buy the attributes associated with displacing my fossil natural gas with renewable natural gas. The renewable natural gas molecule from farms and landfills and digesters is not physically getting to my home. I'll grant that.
Yeah.
In the same way that the electrons from solar arrays and wind turbines are not getting to individuals' homes across the state. So it's a lot of the same principle of paying a premium to be able to effectively make the claim on the attribute of renewability associated with that.
So it's like a green tariff.
Yeah. We thought of it as like a green renewable energy credit.
I've had my hand up for a while. Can I jump into this?
Sure, you have a comment you wanna make?
Yeah, a couple of them. Burlington and South Burlington allow so-called natural gas. That's really not the intent of this ordinance. The intent of this ordinance is to eliminate carbon-based fuels from being installed, because they're all contributing to the climate crisis. So the idea is to not allow carbon-based fuels, and gas in any form is a carbon-based fuel. They're all made from plants. And the maximum amount, I've talked to a woman who was part of the crew that weatherized my home from Vermont Natural Gas, or Vermont Gas Systems. And she said that a maximum of 10% of the gas in the line is from farms. So the whole thing about renewable natural gas, as Matt was saying, it's really a joke. It's really a scam. It's really saying it's something, but it's not. So max of 90% of the gas in the line comes from Bacon shale deposits or any others like that, and only a maximum of 10%. So the whole thing is still a methane is a methane is a methane. It's all carbon based, and it's contributing to our climate crisis. The second thing is that we believe that a 25-year life cycle cost would prove that heat pumps are cheaper than gas, and that you don't need to make exceptions for ADUs or small projects because over a 25-year period, they'll be saving money anyway, and it'll be helping the climate. So it doesn't really matter what the size is. It's not costing you, it's saving you money. Thank you.
Tim, do you have any? So we've talked about the RNG stuff a lot. Do you know of any situation, or can you think of any situation in which a developer could or would make the case that going with, I guess in this case would be 85% RNG would pencil out for the heating system? You mentioned it for hot water, right?
Yeah.
So there may be some cases, but
hot water and commercial and larger multifamilies. There was also a bit of an anomaly with I'll call them a medical facility off of Tilly Drive that was planning a large new construction project in South Burlington. That had got their permit, was grandfathered in before the ordinance went into effect, had designed all of their system based on combustion-based HVAC systems. But because of some delays with the project, certificate of need approval, their permit expired, so they needed to reapply. So it's a very, very unique situation here. So as opposed to them redesigning all of their mechanical systems to be able to accommodate heat pump based systems, they're seeking a waiver utilizing renewable natural gas in those combustion based systems, just because the redesign process will yet cause additional delays and additional costs for a project that has taken a long time to come to fruition.
So,
I tend to be in agreement with Brian and Matt, like about avoiding combustion. I'm also of the opinion that I want to ensure that we do the thing that is the most likely to pass, right? Get through, have support, and get implemented. And I guess the thing I come down to is, like, in the real world, is anyone going to opt for renewable natural gas for the heating systems? And based on some conversations that Eric had some input on this in a few meetings ago. Again, we're not gonna get the perfect answer, but just my own personal, I guess, vote on this is kind of gonna be based on whether or not there's a likely chance that we're going to see this backfire and all of a sudden have all these renewable natural gas installations when what we really intended was heat pumps. And it doesn't seem like that's likely.
Or also, can't they just then call Vermont Gas and say, I just want to go back to the regular gas rate now? Once they have their certificate of occupancy or whatever. There's no
Right.
way.
how do you
Right.
enforce, it's renewable natural gas in perpetuity?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a question. I had.
Correct my pronunciation, but
Perpetuity.
perpetuity.
So you can't opt out of,
Well, I just want to make sure that they can. I mean, I don't think we should include it for multiple reasons, but I also want to make sure people don't use that as the out and then just switch to the
Yeah.
regular natural gas to save
No, I
money.
mean, for me, actually, the methane that's going to be released from landfills or from farms, it's going to get in the atmosphere anyway. So if you're using it, it's actually maybe a better thing, right? But putting it in the infrastructure is not a good thing. But the problem is, it's just not, as Matt just said. I mean, that's a problem. But they could just turn the switch off. Going to just.
They could, but the developer would have had to put it in. I'm trying to think like how it goes through the process. The developer would have had to have made the case that renewable natural gas was the cheapest option, right? Because when they, well, I guess that's on for the
Right,
exception
and
process.
but then they're gonna
Right,
make it.
okay,
even
so then
cheaper.
your point, yeah.
Right. So renewable natural gas for the heating system would not pass the exemption process,
It would just be part of the regular.
but they could just choose it as the option and go with that. And then, come out of, how others have handled this. Like there's just RNG specific infrastructure. It's
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 the same
natural gas,
pipeline.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just molecules of biomethane versus fossil methane.
same furnaces.
Same furnaces, no equipment change out. That's where it becomes the easiest way for a lot of existing buildings to decarbonize, just
Yeah.
because they don't need to swap out equipment. There might be some language choices that relate to some of like the non-fossil fuel heating system where maybe it's combustion based. So that the waiver needs to be considered and applied for any combustion based heating system. So you're demonstrating that the price for renewable natural gas beats heat pumps. That could be a way of
Yeah.
doing it. That would still allow for some of the flexibility and the optionality there, but based on current pricing, it's probably not going to be a viable solution.
But we are not excluding wood.
We should.
Now, just a minute, because you look at the next presentation, which is from Efficiency Vermont, they are promoting large wood furnaces and giving rebates for putting them in homes.
Right.
So a lot of people in Vermont burn wood, not necessarily in Chittenden County so much as other places. And that, to your point about whether it's fossil fuel or combustion, but wood combusts. And we never wrote in here that we were excluding wood, which I don't think we should exclude it.
That way, if we're gonna exclude one, we should exclude them all, right? Like, any
Right.
based.
But that's not what our
Well,
proposal
yeah.
says, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first bullet point under your recommendation states the ordinance should require that the primary heating source be non-fossil fuel, so
Fossil
should it be
fuel. Fossil fuel,
non-combustible
yeah.
fuel? Or
Well-
non- I mean, is wood considered a fossil fuel?
No,
Well, there's the exemption process, right? And if the exemption process is non-onerous for a small, like an individual single family home or an ADU, right? Look. Are people putting in wood burning systems in larger buildings?
There's some schools.
Yeah,
that use it.
yeah, schools are all for
Yeah.
that.
Middlebury's using
Yeah,
it.
but you're not saying that, you're talking about construction.
No, you're right.
If Williston Central School suddenly said, we're gonna take out the natural gas, and I'm gonna put a big wood furnace in the backyard there in the back. Then you would be prohibiting them from doing it if you
Yes, you
exclude.
should. Because wood is the worst for people's health of any fuel, especially for a school with kids around. I mean,
Yeah.
it's terrible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Middlebury
but-
College went to a pellet furnace.
You gotta digest it too.
Well, I suppose that's the question in front of the committee. I mean, maybe that sums up the whole thing. Does that first bullet get changed to non-fossil fuel, from non-fossil fuel to non-combustion?
Yes.
So, I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I like no fossil fuel.
The intent is to help the climate. That's the primary intent of
Yeah.
that Sustainable Williston proposed
And
this.
Brian, we understand, we're trying to keep the discussion amongst the committee, but your points heard, I think
Thank you.
we get it. So we came in with two questions that we have to answer. One is the renewable natural gas question, which I think comes back to the combustion or non-combustion question. Or maybe it doesn't, maybe we say non-fossil fuel and address RNG separately. The second is the ADU, not, I shouldn't say ADU, it's the
Small,
onerous
you know,
nature of the exception process for small scale development.
Yeah, I mean, if you renewable natural gas is different than fossil fuel. I mean, yes, they're mixed in the same line, but if you're paying for that much and if it's all transparent and ethical, then it is it's methane that would have gotten into the atmosphere anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that we should burn methane that's already being produced, whether it's from a farmer's manure pit or from an existing landfill. It's great that we're burning that as opposed to it going into the atmosphere. But I also don't want to incentivize that. Like, I don't want there to become more methane production out there just because there are all these gas customers that now want to greenwash their natural gas by
Yeah.
just paying more. So I don't want to incentivize that. And I think something like this is doing that.
Good point.
Yeah, but I was just trying to make a distinction. I guess it's hard to make a distinction between fossil fuel and, methane and renewable natural gas.
Yeah.
Until we get rid of food waste, until we get rid of manure, until we get rid of landfills, that methane is gonna go somewhere. So our approach with
Yeah.
biomethane is we're not looking to generate more methane, we're looking to
Right.
capture it, extract the energy
No, I
value.
think we should continue to extract it and get it into the system and burn it. I just don't think it should be used as an alternative to electrification.
Right.
That's all.
I want to come back to the combustion piece for a second. If we say non-combustible fuels, right, then one of the options for the exemption process would be for wood, right? So we're not saying you can't do a wood-based system, pellet-based system. We're saying that that would require going through the exemption process. That
Which we haven't defined.
which we haven't defined, and we need to do some work on that, but and again, we're not.
But then you put the onus on the, someone building a house out in the ag rural to come up with the calculation. And it's kind of, that's a lot.
Well, it hasn't been defined yet.
Well, that's what I'm saying, I think the town could do for, individual, single-family homes, we could provide, the formulas for doing that.
So I'll just throw out my thought on all this is we need to build in the most flexibility possible. Just from what I've seen from my side of the electric world. When you start to feel like you're picking a winner, it's a problem. And so just in terms of where I would vote on this, I'm looking for the most flexibility, the ease of understanding. And then what is potentially the least cost for the homeowner or the renter. I'm a renter in Williston. I'll probably never be able to afford a house, but I'd like to think I could. And I am sensitive and concerned to the cost of housing, just the cost of life in general. So like, those are my general thoughts. And I think until we figure out the exemption process or what we're actually going to include in what we're trying to regulate, I think we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's worth trying to get Efficiency Vermont to weigh in, because I'm sure VEIC's got a bunch of smart folks. And I don't know if they've come up with thoughts or ideas on this, but I feel like we need to figure out that exemption process.
Can I just comment on that VEIC remark? That VEIC bought a company that designs biomass heating products. So they are enmeshed in biomass. So you can't really trust VEIC anymore. They used to be a very independent corporation, but now they're in bed with a biomass designer.
Thank you, Brian. So. Do we vote? Do we? We've had this conversation probably 4 times, and it's a good conversation, but I feel like we keep learning new information and then.
It's freaking complicated,
Yeah, and again, the energy committee isn't here to figure out all the details. The energy committee is here to figure out the broad-based recommendations that Melinda, tell me if I'm wrong, but we'll go to planning commission for the actual.
Not planning commission, not select board.
Select board, right?
Yep.
There's also, staff is going to do additional work beyond this, like,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, so for now, the select board is looking for general recommendations on a path. And then, then the select board will make a decision about whether they want to go through with this or not. And if they say yes, then they'll direct staff to work with legal counsel to draft an ordinance.
Okay, so on the
This is,
ordinance,
oh, go ahead, Kevin, please.
yeah, I just want to say that if we're, as far as the waiver goes, let's stick with it, the recommendation, and not, do any other exceptions, because it's just, that's my vote on that. And renewable natural gas, I just don't know about, I'd like to go as Tim recommends, and is to be consistent with Burlington and South Burlington. But I don't understand how you get, a developer says he's going to do renewable, and then the customer, the tenant switches to natural gas, right? So that's a question that needs to be kept in focus as we move forward with accepting renewable natural gas. But it's something that I'm sure South Burlington and Burlington are also facing.
Kevin, just to be clear, when you said keep the waiver as is, you're saying not to change anything for smaller developments, just like it's one waiver that everyone needs to deal with. Are you also saying that, are you okay with us also saying the town can provide a baseline standardized formula for use in small developments that can help people avoid the need to hire an engineer to do this when they just have, put like the example of ADU, or even just an individual single family home?
Yeah, I agree with the way you put it.
I mean, that's more policy level
Right,
than the
yeah.
ordinance, so that's however.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
have that, so that when Melinda or anyone else talks to someone else on like, so the housing committee, as an example, we have some talking points there that we do plan to address the onerous nature of this through policy itself.
Excellent.
One other comment I just want to make is, that we do need to consider and we talk about all of the electrification and heat pumps and everything being more expensive than the gas alternatives, but we do also need to consider the cost of not doing something about this. I mean, I feel like this is a climate emergency and people aren't necessarily acting like that. And we need to do as much as we can, because the continued floods and droughts and fires and the potential for those things is going to drive up all of our costs quite a bit more when we consider what the state and the town is gonna have to pay to rebuild roads and bridges and culverts and everything like that. That's all gonna come out of our pockets on top of this. So we sort of need to consider the cost of inaction when weighing it against the cost of electrification. So I just wanted to say that as well.
I have been kind of considering the cost on carbon as standing in for that
Oh, yeah.
cost of inaction. Now,
Right.
whether $100 a ton is right or not.
Yeah.
That I don't know, but yeah.
That's when I was reading the housing committee's comments, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
So that they're not counting in the externalities, so not doing anything.
All right, Melinda, how do we wrap this?
Just one
Oh, sorry,
Just-
Eric.
couple minor points, but, I think that the fact that it is a climate emergency points to the idea that we want to do something that can have the most effect, right? Which means the least cost, right? Because then you can spread things further. I think that the RNG thing will always be an edge case, it will always be a one-off situation where it happened because this particular, they already had done their mechanical or something like that. It'll never work in the long term. It'll never it's not gonna get cheaper. That fuel will get used in rockets and aviation fuel, if it's not used here. So, Like, the only reason to keep it is to maximize the flexibility, you know, it shouldn't be lost on any of us that every single developer that responded to this survey was negative. You know, the people that actually build the houses that people are supposed to live in, you know, none of them want this, so. You know, sure, they're conservative inherently and they don't want to see something hit their bottom lines, but I mean, at the end of the day, they can just pass that cost on to the consumer. They're still against this, so.
Well, I mean, and let me just, if you don't mind, I'll point out that, that right now, I mean, the costs for housing are just exorbitantly expensive. It costs about $500,000 to build a house right now. That's the cost. So anything you add to that is gonna, you know, I mean, builders are doing this on extremely thin margins right now. And, you know, they're not making a killing. They never were really, but I mean, you know, maybe at some point, but certainly not in this environment. So I think if they get to the point where it doesn't pencil out, they're not gonna build. And you know, we are in a housing crisis too. We have a climate crisis and we also have a housing crisis right now. So I don't know.
How do we reconcile that against? Like the new development in South Burlington, the 100, I forget what they call it, like, yeah, it's totally.
Oh,
Net
zero?
Net zero.
Right, and they're also,
750,000.
yes, there are no affordable homes in that development.
I got
They all started like.
They're deeply
whatever,
subsidized.
$750,000.
In my house, I've installed 2 heat pumps, and probably the cost is like $8,000 for the 2 of them. And I was quoted on a new gas boiler. It was a combi for hot water too, and it was 13,000. So, to me, it's like is it really more expensive to do the to go the gas route? Or, I mean, less expensive to go the gas route?
Only in these edge cases, I guess that's my point, is that,
Right,
I mean, what we've seen is that it really works to go the heat pump route. You know, despite what some of the builders might say, but there may be situations where a particular project needs this. I mean, especially because we lumped in multifamily and commercial, right? Like it gets more complicated there. When we initially looked at this, the proposal from Sustainable Williston was large scale residential development, right? So now we're doing everything. That's kind of why I want to maintain the flexibility. I don't think this is a long-term thing. I think in 5 years, if we're still talking about RNG in homes, like, you know, I don't think it's gonna be something that has a lot of legs. Personally. I work with the guy.
Yeah.
Tim and I are.
Yeah, it's like $230 per ton for RNG, assuming that you're buying into some of the carbon displacement versus $100 per ton is the carbon impact fee. So the numbers just don't work right now.
Okay.
Until your carbon impact fee comes higher than renewable natural gas, it's not gonna be a viable solution.
So you could easily just take it out of here. Take the line right out about it not being allowed. Because if you leave the recommendation as non-fossil fuel and remove the whole thing about RNG not being allowed, it's probably a moot point. You're not gonna get enough people going for it to tip the whole balance of trying to electrify. You're not gonna see a 50-unit apartment building going, wow, I'm gonna go RNG. Because you said the cost is too high.
Well,
Yeah.
So, that's a great point. Why, if we just treat it as one thing, it's methane, right? And if someone says the heat pumps, you know, I shouldn't say this, if
I'm not saying-
an electrified system is not cost efficient. And then they're gonna go with a gas-based system anyways, right? Then they have that flexibility through that exemption process. No one's gonna choose the RNG option off the bat.
Except for in commercial water heating
Yeah.
or.
Yeah,
Commercial loads, multifamily
But that
water.
could be the exception process then, right? And again, you know. Like, we they're already doing those load calculations. That's part of the engineering for these buildings. So RNG is an option through the exemption process.
Or you could just leave it out and just say,
You know, just leave
through
it
the
at.
exemption
leave it out.
process,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
could go all natural gas.
Yeah, sorry, I was saying it's an
Right.
implied, it's implied.
Right.
exemption process.
Just take out that line completely about should not be allowed, just take it right out of the recommendation. Where everything besides non-fossil fuel is the exemption. Well, if you're looking to fossil fuel rather a base or.
No,
Oh,
but then that does have the window, because one could say that renewable natural gas is non-fossil fuel, and I do like using non-fossil fuel, as that's what we don't want. So, yeah, I think you're right.
How is gas not a fossil fuel?
Removing renewable natural gas should not be allowed as a primary source of heat. Removing that statement's fine with me.
How is gas not a fossil fuel? It comes from fossils. Just like coal and oil.
It comes from your trash. It comes from your trash.
It's biological.
Yeah, it's hard to not.
No, it doesn't. It does not.
Comes
Yeah.
from cow poop.
It does not.
Kevin, what
come with trash.
Kevin, what do you want to remove? You said remove a line. I wasn't following.
No, it's what Melinda said. Just get rid of the mention of renewable natural gas, and it
Okay.
just shake
We
out.
already have it kind of covered with the non-fossil fuel, right?
Right.
Assuming that, I mean, the other thing to think about, and we don't see this very often, but you can get propane and fuel oil products that are also bio-based, they're also expensive, but.
Bring in the clean heat standards.
Yeah. Which is a whole nother thing that, so outside of the Vermont gas footprint, if you were doing a larger development or a single family home even, out in the ag rural, I mean,
Right, you wouldn't have the option even.
yeah.
So Melinda, if this went through magically tomorrow, as it stands today, with the wording as it is today, and a developer built a system and used biofuel, would that be allowed?
Well, I guess now I think about it, it's even, heat pumps make even more sense outside of,
Okay, no, I agree. I'm just wondering, like,
right?
we've been having all this focus on renewable natural gas, but the same exact, if we're debating what the word fossil fuel means, like when I hear fossil fuel, I consider methane a fossil fuel, even if
Well,
that
you can
specific
define it.
molecules.
The
Yeah.
ordinance can define it as such. You could say.
Yeah.
Fossil fuels also includes renewable natural gas.
Okay,
You can,
and biofuels and
yeah, it includes biofuels and. as
combustible
well
liquid
as-
fuels.
Yeah, so you can define that in the ordinance.
Yeah.
But that's not true. Fossil fuel is that it's,
Yeah, but you can, just for the
thousands of
sake
years
of the-
old.
yeah, but just for the sake of the ordinance, you can define it however you like. They do that in state rules all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can.
or,
For the sake
of
of this rule.
it's a waste of time to
Yeah.
be wordsmithing to this degree. You
That's gonna
need to
get all-
decide like
Yes.
whether you want to allow it or not.
Okay, does someone want to make a motion to strike bullet 5 from the recommend, I think that's the way to move forward, right? Someone would make a motion to strike that bullet and then we would vote on,
We're leaving non-fossil fuel in bullet 1 as is.
I think that's what we're saying, yeah. So we say non-fossil fuel, we will define, or somebody, like the staff or select board will define what fossil fuel means.
But I mean, your intent is to exclude renewable natural gas. And that's all that needs to be said, right? That's
No.
your intent. And we'll figure out how to word it later.
Well, I think,
I'm not, I thought we were going toward the flexibility. And I thought I heard Eric and Michael and myself saying flexibility, and just,
So
we're not gonna
Yeah.
exclude renewable.
so I have flexibility as well, but I believe the flexibility comes through the exemption process, not through allowing RNG
Well,
from the
or,
get-go.
or the way non-fossil fuel is defined now, and if the select board and the lawyers decide it includes methane, then I can live with that. I mean, I lost out, right?
But either way, the exemption process is still there. If someone chooses to, the exemption process is always there for them to make the case that they, you know, like the examples of like the commercial hot water or the building that was like halfway
Cold stoves,
down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to?
So do you guys just wanna like take a vote via raise of hands, like who wants to not allow renewable natural gas, who wants to allow it? And just,
Yeah, say it to
Decide
the
what you-
positive. Who wants to
decide what you
allow
want.
RNG? Either, yeah, just
flat.
I'm sorry to be a pain, but I don't know that we need to decide on that. Right? I mean, if we're gonna scratch bullet number 5, we're just not gonna mention it, right? So,
Well, yeah, so when the select board asks, or if they ask, I would say the energy committee's undecided about this.
well, no, we're gonna let it go through the
take a vote.
process and
Okay,
see
then
if there's a
we'll go.
viable case for
Okay.
Do I make the motion?
To do the
Just,
straw vote?
no,
No,
just take a straw poll.
Okay, so straw man vote. All in favor,
Of allowing-
straw person vote. All in favor of keeping bullet 5, renewable natural gas should not be allowed. So if you put your hand up, you agree that it should not be allowed in the base case, not exemption case, just in the base case, you're saying renewable natural gas should not be allowed. So all in favor,
As the 85% of the heat.
Right,
this
Okay.
is the clean portion. Yes.
Okay.
So all in favor of saying renewable natural gas should not be allowed, please raise your hand.
To be clear, I'm abstaining, so my hand isn't going up or down.
Okay.
That comes out to be the other vote.
Or against, yeah,
Yeah.
you can still vote in straw votes, come on.
Kevin, what's your vote?
But I did not agree with the statement, so I.
Okay. All right, so
Okay.
because we have at least one abstention, all opposed to the thing I just, sorry, this is getting twisted in my head, but all opposed.
That's
please raise your-
removing the bullet.
If you want to remove the bullet.
You want the double negative here, right?
This is the one you wanna vote for.
If you want to remove, if you want to
Trust
remove,
me, this is the one you wanna.
if
vote
you want
You
to
wanna
remove the bullet,
raise your hand.
I want to not.
God.
So Kevin, are you putting your hand up to remove the bullet or not?
Yes, remove the bullet.
Okay. So 3-2 with one abstention in the straw man poll.
Well,
Well, so
Now
it
we-
sounds like there is a. I don't know, sort of vague majority who are in favor of removing that bullet.
Well, it's a majority.
Oh,
It is majority.
It is a majority.
It is majority. I think the implication is that that bullet is going to serve as a recommendation for how we define fossil fuel, is what it's gonna come down to, right? Whether RNG is included in the definition of fossil
Right.
fuel.
yeah,
Okay,
essentially. yeah.
shall we do the same? So, does anyone who would be in favor of a different and I'm not, a different exemption process for some, I'll say smaller developments, which could be just one single family home. I'm excluding from this, providing like, you know, standards or worksheets, whatever, but if we believe there should be a separate process for smaller developments, single family homes, you know, standalone single family homes, ADUs, et cetera. If you believe there should be a separate process for the exemption, please raise your hand.
we're assuming this is making it easier, streamline.
This would be not just making it, well, that's why.
We really wanna capture the big housing projects and stuff mainly.
So
I mean,
you're-
that's where we're gonna have the most impact.
Yeah, so allowing flexibility
So-
for smaller projects.
So all you need to do in the first line, the ordinance should include a waiver provision as it applies to
It just says
large,
developer. right
yeah,
there.
but large scale developments, parentheses, greater than X number of units, which
Really
we
just
can
one,
define it.
it's like one unit, really,
Yeah,
anything
right.
over one unit, right?
Well, you could form a duplex or triplex, yeah,
But
I would say.
are we saying that if someone's putting in an ADU, they can, that the entire policy will not apply to them? If there's no, if we're saying there's no waiver process for them, then we're just giving them the green light to put in whatever they want.
I don't agree with that. Yeah, we should, yeah, I just think we should make it easy for them, as you said, have worksheets.
I think we should make it easy for them. I don't think we should eliminate
Yeah,
the need for a waiver. I feel like there should still be a waiver, but it should be something a layperson could fill out using a worksheet provided by the town.
You're not hiring an engineer to
You don't,
figure it
yeah.
out, yeah,
right.
and when the high school students can do it, and you're good,
Yeah.
yeah.
So maybe the wording, so, yeah, I'll ask it this way. All in favor of providing a streamlined waiver process for small developments? Please raise your hand.
I,
Oh, go.
All right, no one even abstained on that.
Abstain.
Okay. We've got all of us, okay.
You can't unabstain.
We've been together as a committee, formed as a committee for 3 years now. This is without a doubt the single most
Oh,
contentious
just
thing.
wait for legislature.
as a topic we've had.
This is not easy.
You missed the leaf blower discussion.
That's true. I wanted to.
Doesn't have anything to do with
Do you feel like you're good with this right now?
I think so.
Okay.
Tim, thank you for.
Absolutely. Hopefully
Not
this was
only coming in,
helpful.
but
It
putting up with
was
us.
very much so, and the write-up that came from your company was very good too, very inclusive of everything we see, so that's good.
Fantastic, yeah.
Could I just make a point? Googling whether natural gas is a fossil fuel, you'll find that in the United States, it's considered a fossil fuel because it's formed from plants from millions of years ago, just like coal and gas and oil. It's considered a fossil fuel. So
Yeah,
under
and so
our
that-
definition, fossil fuel could be
Yes,
excluded.
but renewable natural gases.
That would be something that, we
And
haven't.
it's all methane, whether it's millions of years
No, it's
old. or
not.
a few
It's
years.
millions of
Yeah.
years old.
So guys, like this is what we just went through, but we haven't greenlit RNG. We have chosen not to explicitly exclude it. It now goes to the select board and lawyers, I suppose, to figure out what the definition of natural gas is. We've just chosen,
Or not.
we voted, 3-2 to not explicitly exclude it. All right, with that, I think we've successfully wrapped up this topic. We've 10 minutes to go. So Melinda, I think the question in front of us now is, do we have any hope of getting meaningful progress on the work plans, or should we just use the remaining 10 minutes for other business, or do we try and go a little bit later? What were your thoughts?
There's also the capital budget memo, and then
I wanted to talk about the capital
this is your
budget.
one and only crack at the capital
Okay.
budget memo, so.
Well, let's hit it.
Okay, yeah, great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Good luck.
Happy holidays to you.
You as well. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'll take that.
Need that.
You don't need it tonight, you might need it this weekend.
Yeah, for sure.
So as you'll recall, last year you wrote a memo for the capital budget. And the year before, let me see if I can make this bigger. I basically took that memo, made a few changes to it based on things that are already happening or things that are planned to be happening. And I confess that the planning commission has already gone through and drafted their letter to the select board, which includes this. So I gave it to them as written today. Of course, you can still make changes
Yeah,
to it, but this is something that has kind of slipped the, you know, it's gotten passed.
I just have a couple of just minor comments. If we go to the next page, please. Let's see, under municipal buildings, that first sentence, it says the municipal buildings with renewable energy powered equipment. I don't, renewable energy powered? I mean,
Yeah,
is,
okay, right.
should it be something like electric?
Non-fossil fuel.
Yeah.
Electric, yeah.
Well, it may include
Okay.
Okay, and then in this number 5,
Small scale nuclear reactor.
Sign me up.
in number 5, I would, could we add in to, on an ongoing process, look for opportunities to do weatherization, improvements such as, water, insulating water pipes and ducting, things like that, Just, there's always ongoing weatherization improvements to be made.
Yeah, I mean.
This is capital budget.
Yep. Okay, well,
Well, I mean,
Well,
so major weatherization would be like in the capital budget.
right.
Yeah. Weatherization.
we don't have a bullet for weatherization, so.
Yep.
Melinda, in section 3, vehicle fleets,
Mm-hmm.
I believe we should have. I've been going to the budget meetings for probably 4 years now. And every time I hear the same statement. That we will keep our eyes on the development of electric vehicles and when they become, et cetera.
If you look under, I know what you're gonna say, if you
I
look,
didn't say, did you put it in there?
if you look under 7 general recommendations, so the first bullet.
Life cycle cost analysis.
So that would also apply to electric vehicles. But it would also apply across the board, so when they're talking about replacing HVAC equipment in buildings. Or replacing vehicles, they would have to, the recommendation would be to go through that process of the cost analysis.
Can we remove the word future? Basically, when considering upgrades or purchases where
Sure.
there are opportunities for electrification.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
yep,
distance.
And maybe the inevitable question is gonna be, or comment is gonna be, that is too onerous, but we have. We want to also include, I think you mentioned it above, that we've got in hand, the DOE NRL, analysis.
yep,
Right, and that's been provided, has
Mhm.
that been provided to all of our department heads?
No,
We also just say under recommendation that every department head will be provided the DOE NRL fleet analysis
sure,
to facilitate this, whatever word we're using.
Mhm.
To facilitate the life cycle cost analysis.
yeah,
I just feel really strongly that we've got to make it an opt out, not an opt in.
Mhm.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
I don't know if considering the life cycle costs is really is that helpful? Because, most municipal vehicles they don't get a lot of miles on them, right? So,
well, it would be comparing apples to apples, so assuming whether it's an electric vehicle or a. Or a conventional vehicle that it gets used for 7
miles.
years and then replaced. Yeah,
The honest answer is it may be difficult to, I believe the fire department was buying, previously used. Or they purchased a previously used remember if it was expedition or excursion, whatever that was.
No, for the fire chief or something.
Yeah, right, and I think we all need to acknowledge that it may be difficult for some of the stuff to pencil out if they're very infrequently used, they get less than. The standard number of miles in a year, but
Mhm.
a lot of these calculations are based off of, then we need to decide if that's still. You know,
Mhm.
the only thing I don't love about this. This is a decision the town can make to actually, and maybe it comes out in the wash for the carbon cost. But we're saying, even if it is. A reasonable amount more expensive, the town should take the electrified option. This is a little bit different than putting that. Putting that onto a home buyer, for example, like with the previous clean heat conversation.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think this is a good step. I'm just wondering, I would have to do some math and figure out if this is gonna give us, net us the. Sorry, I don't know. But the NRL study says it should, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Even for the lower mileage.
I'd have to look at it again, but, I mean, in the end, this may not really matter because I think the argument is that. They're not sure that electric vehicles can, support their equipment needs, like, they keep the vehicles running all the time so that they can power up. Keep their equipment powered up and stuff, and they're not confident that electric vehicles. Will be able to keep their equipment powered up and not run out of, battery power during an incident, so that's the fear. So, I mean, really what needs to happen is they need to
We're
start
talking
testing
police
things out.
and fire, like first
Yeah, police and
responders.
fire,
Oh.
public works, there's no excuse. They
Yeah.
should just do that.
Yeah.
I'm selling an EV right now, it's bright red, would go great with the fire department, give them a great deal on it, if you want to buy it, test it out.
But I don't know, I think that this would provide for some accountability anyway. And so,
Yeah.
they couldn't make the excuse that it's just too expensive. I don't know.
Well, they could, but they'd have to tell us how much more expensive it is, and then that's a step in the right direction.
Does the NRL study taken like any recommendations on like a hybrid?
Yep, they included hybrids.
Okay,
Um,
cause that's the, I mean, we
conventional.
got like 65 vehicles on gas and like a legitimate, like. Need to reduce your carbon footprint and
Mhm.
for the, for the charging of the equipment. Those hybrids, I mean, like, there's some irony that people that run battery powered equipment that's electric. Need gas powered. Vehicles to charge their electric equipment, right?
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah.
that's where a hybrid thing would come in,
Uh-huh.
because you can charge. You don't need the inverter, just.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you want to put that in here, when you say opportunities for electrification, you could put in, hybrid or plug-in hybrids. And
Or maybe,
that would be, because, 99% of the time that would, the police would be able to charge up and
yeah,
then have gas if they run into a situation, but they don't need to, like, my wife never uses
I
gas.
could put a bullet. Under
I
three
generally think
about,
plug-in hybrids are a poor choice for 99.9% of use cases, but the fire chief use case actually might be a
Yeah.
good one, because.
That's the only ones I can think of is, I don't know where you need the charging.
just a plug-in hybrid, is that what
Yeah,
you're
the
saying?
plug-in hybrid, or the cop car, that when they're sitting there.
Yeah,
There's just so many police departments that have gone EV at this point, though, that, I mean, I know Richmond didn't like the form factor of the Model 3, it was hard to get in and out of. Fully dressed, right, but and with gear on, but. There's so many that have gone with it and had good results at this point. I mean, look at GM, and I realize this is emergency, but GMP's got a pretty large number of work trucks that are going out in emergencies, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep,
All right, well, we got through that.
okay. You good with that?
Anyone
With those
else have
changes?
any other comments? All right, so with those we don't need to vote on this, right? With those changes, you'll just take those changes to
Mhm.
planning.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes,
And then that brings us to. I feel like work plan is a bigger, longer conversation.
Mhm.
Year's gonna be over by the time we get to it.
Would you all mind if we assign some homework that we all read through those and sent Melinda recommendations before the next meeting, so that we can. Maybe quickly move through that, the next one, and not need to
The work plan,
delay further, yes, if we, the work,
Okay.
and I don't know how you want, if you wanna use, like, we've used. Was it mural or Menti, we've used different things before, like, would it be
think-
helpful to collect input?
this is not sort of a discussion about the global work plan. I think you're done with that. This is
Yeah.
more some specific things that came up that, you know, that you guys might consider working on in the next, you know, kind of related and integrated with your work plan. These are very specific things, that,
Yeah,
you
okay.
know, so we're talking about. There's a proposal from Shelburne to have a bunch of committees from Southern Chittenden County work on an energy navigators program, so that's like a discussion item. I'm not saying get
Oh,
into
yeah.
it tonight, but,
Yeah.
Could we, in the spirit of moving forward fast on this,
yeah,
one thing we, I think. Discovered was that people can be in favor of something, but no one wants to be the person on point.
mhm,
Maybe between now and the next meeting, if anyone. Feels strongly enough about one of these that you are willing to be the point person for that. Like, would that be a starting point
So the energy,
of the four specific,
of those four, like?
well, Melinda and I are already running the shopping trolley one.
no, well, we'll know what you're gonna pick.
Yeah.
No, but actually the energy navigator one, that's the Shelburne one, right?
yeah.
Addison County one, I'm gonna go to that meeting. They have a group meeting in January.
Can more than one of us
They've
go?
been-
Yeah, yeah,
invited-
anybody can
yeah,
go.
they've
How does
been-
How does that
It's the,
jive or not jive with BCAN?
It's
It's-
different.
let's see, it's January 23rd.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Yes, that meeting.
I mean, I'm interested in that as well. And would be
Yeah.
willing to go, I'm just.
And then-
It sounds like it
and then
overlaps with the
reading-
BCAN idea.
Reading the Energy Navigators program and reading the Efficiency Vermont rebate program, there's a lot of overlap in them.
Oh, yeah, for sure,
Tremendous amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
I attended the Energy Navigator info for, I think it was with the VCAN last week. It was very interesting. They got a great program, but requires somebody who's really knowledgeable about, like a Scott Gardner or something like that, you know.
I mean, not anyway, I think,
Okay, do they train you to be that kind of person?
there is some training. I actually went through a training offered by, Rewiring America. But they basically, train folks how to be navigators, so that's one approach. Not as hard as you might think. I mean, you probably have as much knowledge as anybody needs around heat pumps and stuff. So,
I'll do the training so I can have a certificate.
something to consider anyway. And then, I mean, really quickly, the senior meals outreach program just started a weekly senior meals. It's a captive audience. It's a really good opportunity to do some outreach if you want to think about scheduling some
So
appearances.
a week ago, we went, because a month ago, we voted to spend some of our grant money on these shopping trolleys.
Yeah.
So Melinda obtained 10 of them through the nonprofit that provides them. We showed up, expected to distribute 2, and we sold all 10 at a heavy discount.
Wow.
Yeah,
At the senior meals.
at the seal
Yeah.
meters, they're just like by the end of a half-hour presentation, they were all gone.
That's awesome.
So this month's Observer Living Green article is about that. So I just finished writing it today. I've got input from Net Zero that provides the shopping trolleys. Melinda's done some editing on it. We've got photos, and that's gonna be published day after Christmas.
Is there an opportunity, so this sounds more, senior meals sounds more like the type of thing we've done with, Rotary. This is.
Yeah,
this is
so you
the
could go in with one we thought with the energy kits.
Yeah.
Go in and talk about what we do. You've got 20+ people there. who are pretty lively group of seniors.
You could also distribute energy materials
Meals,
too.
and already because of that one, because it's not just all Williston people. There was people from South Burlington, they want to talk, they're gonna do the shopping trolleys over there. There's one going from Montpelier, that I talked to Deb today, and Deb Sachs from Net Zero. So already that one meal has generated 2 more demonstrations, not that we're gonna do them, but other
Right.
towns are.
Yeah,
So it's a good group that's not afraid to take in information and then go talk to their neighbors about it.
right, I mean, it seems like a pretty nice, easy win, you know. to-
Yeah.
Be a good one to spread out window dressers for next year, information about that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, window dress.
So so it's at the rec thing on Hardest Lane,
Right,
right?
Yeah.
next to where you work, yeah.
Yeah, I work right upstairs,
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah, I can just come down and
If
have
I'd
some
known that, I
lunch.
would have just.
Yes, you do,
gone
yes,
upstairs
yes,
and-
you throw a couple bucks in
Um,
a jar and you can have lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be pretty easy for me to
Yeah.
just go down and do that.
Is there just a random question, how do they define senior? Is there like some specific?
The rec group upstairs sends out
Or is there-
notices
I-
and said it's a senior lunch.
I think it was like 55 plus.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
basically self-select, okay.
But I met people there who were 92, and so they were
55.
pretty good.
nice.
Yeah. Oh, AARP's down to 50 now.
So, man.
Ooh.
Yeah,
We're all
yeah.
seniors.
Who's
Yeah.
retiring at 50?
Oh, nobody's retiring at 50.
Well,
What if I could?
I got delusions of retirement.
Anyway, we kind of got ball rolling. Melinda passed me the information from the rec department upstairs, and it was really easy to set it up and it worked. So we've got it in with a group that's willing to talk to us.
It seems like it would also be a great place to test out some content
Yeah.
in maybe a lower risk environment, like,
You guys are guinea pigs now.
well, no, but as we talk about things like, doing a forum series at the library or whatever, that requires a lot of work, this would be a good place to test out some of the content, right? See what the reception is, see if we have to
60
be
and
over.
over.
Oh, 60 and all.
60 plus.
Okay.
Okay.
And the
Go
spouse
for it.
regardless of age, so
Oh,
the spouse
okay.
could be younger, but they're.
I'd be interested in doing one on electric vehicles.
And they're a busy group because I looked at their January schedule and they already have speakers for all 4 weeks, so we're already can think about February by now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Should we be considering that as, if not a monthly thing, like, we consider the living green articles, do we wanna?
If we have a topic, we need to talk to Taylor upstairs and get on her calendar to be a speaker. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like doing a, window dressers presentation.
Yeah.
Would be good for like sometime during the winter when people are
Mhm.
cold and they're thinking about.
And we could get Allison in here with her materials too, and her big window and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But that means scheduling her time too, because she's down in. Not Southern,
Bristol.
Bristol, yeah.
So then maybe EV one in like April.
So it's only scheduled so far till the end of January.
Right.
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Alright, so we ended up having that conversation, good,
Yes.
Wasn't that
it
bad?
wasn't that bad, that was gonna be more in depth, Reed. You wanna take our living green?
Well, that's it, the walk to shop trolleys is the living
Is-
green. That
Yeah.
For January?
but December,
Very
December,
Are you-
so,
We should get ahead of January.
yeah, so January's would be published. Second, 9th, 6th to the 23rd, so it has to be done by the 18th.
That
Busy month.
might be good to do a piece on the new rebate programs. Have you guys heard about the rebate programs? Like they're providing for low income households, 100% of the cost of upgrading your electric system. Plus for moderate income, 90% of the cost.
That's in that efficiency Vermont.
Yeah,
Links there, yeah.
That would be a great time.
Yeah,
and other
Like the upgrading the panel.
upgrading the panel.
yeah, yes, yes,
Yeah,
a big one on that.
Yeah,
Is that the one that you do, have weatherized your house within the last 5 years now to qualify?
I don't think so.
Looks
There's
like
one
it.
where it's pretty hard to qualify for.
Oh, really? I'll have to look over
Mm.
that, sure, those.
It was a web session, so that's basically like a PowerPoint. That link.
40,
Mhm.
slide time one.
Melinda, this is apropos of nothing other than what we talked about previously today. Do you know, or could you find out? Vermont Gas is on the hook for running up to 100 feet of infrastructure on someone's property, right, to extend the way they're content.
Yeah.
For the ADU case.
Mhm.
Do you know, does anyone know, or can you find out? Who bears the cost for electrical system upgrades that GMP would need to do? I'm thinking in an older home with 100 amp, this kind of stuff aside, older home, 100 amp service, upgrade to 200, is that on the homeowner or is that? on-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Homeowner,
We've done things where we've, when Tim's teams have installed, we've put in conduit for people, but so they can run their services.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
like under their driveways and stuff, because it's on them, it's on the homeowner to run the service, right? To the,
Yeah,
and then if there's a
Really?
transformer
Will you
upgrade,
do that for me?
talk to Tim, maybe get renewable
Yeah.
natural gas.
Yeah.
I mean, the crew's fast, they'll shoot through your driveway before you have a chance to get a system operating.
That just seems like a horrible,
yeah.
misalignment of incentives.
I mean, I got
Well,
quoted,
GMP does have like an incentive program, but it's pretty, again, it's one of these things they're just trying to figure out how to apply it.
Yeah.
Count for tier 3 and so.
I got quoted 5,000 to upgrade my panel, but that didn't
Me too.
include
The service.
the service
yeah.
from and mine is underground.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that's
it's
what
an
gets
existing
expensive, yeah.
conduit, and they're like, we don't know if what we need to add will fit through that, so we're gonna have to run another conduit.
My in-laws in
I'm like,
Massachusetts.
can I have
reported
that
40.
third leg just go above ground, even though my other two are underground? They're like, yeah, you could do that, I
So you're-
guess, but
You got 100 amp service today.
yeah.
Yeah, it's that service, I mean, the panels, they've started to address the panel issue, but that service last bit.
I have 60 amps.
Yeah, I
60,
remember you said that.
Yeah, this is a house that was built in the 50s in Burlington. And I got it would cost $5,000 to upgrade it.
I mean, even 5 doesn't sound like, and my in-laws wanted to get to run heat pumps in Massachusetts and it was 30 or 40,000. Because it was trenching under the street, under,
Yeah.
and then up along the driveway, it
Yeah.
was, right, it's prohibitive.
Mm.
Cool, all right, well, with that, I think we can wrap this edition
Okay,
meeting. You
Really
ready?
have a good holiday.
Yeah, happy holidays to all of you.
Yeah,
see ya.
Before we physically leave, the January meetings are going to be the 8th and 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
I can tell you, I will not be here on the 8th, I'll be in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow. Okay,
I would rather be,
Yeah, bummer.
I hate Las Vegas.
all right. Hanging off.
Everything's,
I can't-
everything wrong with the country.
I will be there.